So how do we deal with intrusive thoughts? What do we do if it feels like we cannot stop from overthinking all the time and it's really not helping us to stay in the wish fulfilled? This is a question that I get asked nearly every single day. So let's talk about this today. Let's talk about intrusive thoughts. By the way, hi, I'm Missy Renee. On this channel, we talk all things manifestation and the law of assumption. So if that is your bag, definitely don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. If you're interested in more resources from me, I have links down below in the description box to my coaching programs, my workshops, and masterclasses. So if you're interested, don't forget to check that out. And oh boy, I could go on for days on this topic alone. There is a lot to cover when it comes to those intrusive thoughts, those insistent thoughts that seem to always just want to come back like freaking Groundhog's Day. We just can't get away from it. Because for those in the manifestation community, we have this innate fear of our thoughts. And the reason that this has become such a difficult thing to deal with, why so many people struggle with intrusive thoughts, is because of the idea that your thoughts have creative power. This is one of the very first things that we learn when we find out about manifestation, that your thoughts create your reality. So there is this belief that what we think is what ultimately becomes the 3D reality. And this is partially true. And it's been spoken about so many times by so many different people. You can almost think of it like a game of telephone, where so many people have talked about it, shaped it, and have molded it to the point where it has been whittled down so much that people are taking this to mean that every thought literally creates. And because of this misconception, we naturally have a lot of fear about our thoughts. And now we have given our power to these thoughts, where it was not the case that your thoughts even had all of the creative power, because they don't. So before we dive into what to do about intrusive thoughts, I really need to dispel this notion that every thought creates, or that your thoughts create, because what people are hearing, once again, is that any bad thought that comes into my mind is immediately going to transform into something terrible. When we become scared of our thoughts, when we start to panic and react in a way of, oh God, I can't have that thought. I need to get rid of that thought. That thought's bad. No, bad thought, go away. When we start to take this approach to every thought that comes through our mind, it's going to get exhausting very fast. So the first thing that we need to get crystal clear about is that your thoughts in and of themselves is not what creates. Your thoughts on their own do not have creative power. In fact, your thoughts are just the byproduct of any given state of consciousness. You can think of it akin to your 3D circumstances. It is all the byproduct of the state or reality that you are occupying or have been occupying. So it is not that every single thought that we have manifests. And we know this to be true because if you think about it, we have on average 70,000 thoughts a day, and a lot of those thoughts never see the light of day. The thoughts that create, the ones that do turn into physical 3D manifestations, are the thoughts that we believe. It's the thoughts that we resonate with, the ones that feel real to us. So a helpful way to look at thoughts is the same that we look at the 3D circumstances. It's all feedback. It's all feedback telling us what the beliefs and assumptions are, and thus what the state of consciousness is. Because again, thoughts on their own don't have the power to manifest. So this is where I may need to go on a little bit of a rant, because this really needs to be dispelled and debunked for good, because the harm that it is doing to people when obsessing and fearing their own thoughts is creating so much struggle and anxiety and despair where there does not need to be any. And I could speak from personal experience on this one, because I, like many people on this journey, found myself battling intrusive thoughts all day, every day. It became almost an obsessive tendency for me. And a lot of people are grappling with the same thing. And this is not even an effective way to go about dealing with these negative thoughts. So we have got to dispel this notion that it is your thoughts themselves that create, because that is just not true. We need to wash that away. We need to scrub that out, because the amount of suffering that people are having due to this misconception is staggering. It is alarming. And worst of all, it's not true. Your thoughts on their own have no power. It's only whatever power we give to them. And that is where we find ourselves struggling so much. Because we are so fearful of this thought, we then hone in like a laser to any negative thought and try to dispel it. We try to fight it. We try to fight with our thoughts, which only winds up becoming us fighting with our own mind. So we're effectively fighting ourselves. Make it make sense. We have to come back and remember that the only true creative power in existence is I am. And that is you. That is your awareness. That is the greater self, the bigger self. So it is awareness. It is I am, your I amness that creates, not the thoughts themselves. The thoughts, again, are just a byproduct of any given state of consciousness. So just like how everybody says in this community that circumstances don't matter, because they don't, our thoughts don't really matter either, unless we decide that they do. Okay, rant over. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So with all that said, how should we be dealing with negative thoughts? How should we be approaching this if we do notice ourselves having intrusive thoughts? So this is going to be a little bit of a different approach than what most are used to. We really just want to fall back onto our mental diet. And by mental diet, I don't mean the idea that we need to sit there and flip thoughts all day. For many, we are taught to flip our negative thoughts, to sit there and flip all day long if we're noticing intrusive thoughts, which if anybody has tried this more than once, you know that it is utterly exhausting and soul draining. In fact, that is probably the least effective approach, because lo and behold, no matter how many times you flip those thoughts, they're still coming back. Because we're only exerting willpower and conscious effort by doing so. By trying to take the approach of flipping every negative thought, you are taking the action of exerting conscious effort. You are trying to flip your thoughts. But if we go back to the law of reversed effort, or the backwards law, that law states that when the conscious mind and the subconscious mind are at odds with each other, it is the subconscious mind that wins every time. So trying to catch and flip every single negative thought becomes pretty fruitless after a while. It almost becomes one of those analogies where you're in the rowboat and there's a hole in the boat and you're trying to get the water out with a bucket, but as you're moving the water out, more water is just coming in through the hole in the boat. It's essentially pointless. As we're sitting there trying to flip our thoughts, it is only bringing more negative thoughts in, because what we're actually doing is giving our focus and attention to these unwanted thoughts and to fighting with ourselves, which unintentionally is bringing about more negative thoughts. You can think of it like the pink elephant. If you try not to think of a pink elephant, what's the first thing that you're going to do? So what we actually want to do, and this is going to sound crazy, I know, it's one of the infinite paradoxes of manifestation, but what we actually want to do when we become aware of negative intrusive thoughts is to just observe them. And try to observe them from as much of an objective place as possible. And again, if we're looking at thoughts the same as we do the 3D, and that it's all feedback, it's all just feedback into what state of consciousness you've been occupying, or what belief or assumption you hold on to, then we can actually glean a lot of information from that. So we just want to observe. And specifically, we want to observe how we are reacting to those thoughts, because that is actually what gives thoughts creative power. It is the reaction to those thoughts that give it that potential creative power. And I say potential because you as I am, you as awareness, always has veto power and veto authority through the act of revision. But it can be very telling, and there's a lot that we can glean from observing our thoughts, and even more specifically, observing our reactions to our thoughts, because it is the reaction that's going to tell you what you actually believe, what you actually think is real and true for you. And as I mentioned earlier about which thoughts actually manifest, it is the thoughts that we believe are true, the ones that we believe are real, the ones that we believe and assume. That is going to tell you what state of consciousness you've been occupying, and even more specifically, what the beliefs and assumptions are. So we can have a better understanding of, are we in fact living in the end or not? Because the best gauge that we have to tell us if we are living in the end or not is how we react. So the reaction to a thought is what tells you the belief and assumption there. That is what tells you the state that you are selecting and occupying. So if you are noticing a lot of fear to those intrusive thoughts, that is your cue, that is your gauge that, hey, this is still a belief that you have. You are still holding on to this belief that you and your person are never going to work out, or that you believe that nothing is going to manifest for you, or that they're not going to love you anymore, that they don't love you. But your fearful thoughts, and more specifically, your reaction to those thoughts, is just confirming what you believe to be true, what you actually believe to be true. So it's not the intrusive thought itself. It's not the fact that you have a few negative thoughts or even several negative thoughts, but instead it is how you react to them. It is the belief behind them. It is the realness that it feels to you. Your reaction to this intrusive thought just says, hey, this is something that you are still holding on to. This is something that you still believe to be true. Because again, if you didn't believe the thought was true, you wouldn't react to it. There would be nothing to react to. It would be the easiest thing in the world to just kind of brush off and dismiss. And let's say, for example, that you're going about your day and you have the random thought pop in that you're going to get attacked by a bear today. And the overwhelming odds are, unless you're under a tarp in the middle of the wilderness, that's not going to be a genuine fear that you have. That's not going to be an actual belief that you have that you're going to get attacked by a bear. So you're going to be quick to dismiss it. You're going to say, well, that was a weird thought, and you're just going to go about your day. This is how you know. This is your gauge. This is how you can tell what you actually believe and what you don't. And again, it all comes back to your beliefs and assumptions. It is the belief and assumptions that you hold, the conceptions of self, that determine what state or what reality you manifest. Hence the name, the law of assumption. So random intrusive thoughts that you genuinely don't believe are true or possible, you're not going to give them the time of day. And you're not going to be bombarded by them. You're not going to be tempted to sit there and fight with them, because you're going to know that that's a ridiculous thought, and that thoughts by themselves don't have power. Only the power that we give to those thoughts. It is only the power that we as awareness, as I am, give to those thoughts. So we are observing these thoughts. We are observing and just being as objective and aware as we can be, and noting any kind of reaction that we have, noting any kind of feeling that we have, noticing any kind of shift in our mood, noticing if there's a physical reaction. Any of these indications are going to be clear signs as to what you have been selecting and what you have been feeling and thinking into as of late. While at the same time, we are also remembering that we are not these intrusive thoughts, that these intrusive thoughts do not have power over us unless we, as awareness, accidentally and unconsciously give that power away. So you're noting the thought and you're noting any reaction that comes up with it, and as awareness, as objective as you can be, you're saying, right, okay, this is a belief that I've been holding on to. This is an assumption that I have had. But as the operant power, as the one who actually creates my reality, as I am choosing to know and fully accept that these thoughts are all the byproduct of an old state. Just like how unwanted 3D circumstances are just the old product of an impression that was had, the same thing goes for your thoughts. So we find ourselves having a negative streak of thoughts. It is due to the belief that we had been holding on to that selected the reality and thus the thoughts and 3D experiences that came with it. So basically, you are just observing these thoughts and the reactions that you have to it, while also remembering as much and as often as you can, remembering to go back to the fact that you are the I am. You are the operant power. And it may be easy to forget that when we are in that moment, when we are in that reaction. But as soon as we are able to come back to that realization that these old thoughts, just like my 3D surroundings, is all old state. It's all old news, and none of it ultimately matters anyway. And then as soon as you are able to, as soon as that reaction has passed through you, as soon as those thoughts start to decrease and you are no longer reacting to those thoughts, we then just want to go back into imagination. We're taking the feedback that we just got from those thoughts and from our reactions. We take that feedback and we use it to determine what state we want to imagine now. We are saying, okay, but what if I was the version of myself who was not fearful of these thoughts? If I was not fearful of these beliefs, if I didn't have the fear that my SP doesn't love me or that my SP is never going to come back to me, as that version, what would that be like? How would I be reacting from that place, from that state? And then you are going there and you are continuing to go there in imagination, because your imagination is your creative power. That is the creative power of God within you. That is the door to any state of consciousness that you can experience. So we are not our thoughts. We do not need to fear our thoughts. We do not need to flip our thoughts indefinitely. We do not need to do any of this, because it is not the thought by itself that manifests. None of those things have power over you. Your thoughts only create what you assume and believe to be true. And even then, you have the power and ability through revision to change it, to move out of that state, to select a whole new reality instead. So we are learning discernment. We are learning to be indifferent. We are learning to be as observing and objective as we can be when it comes to our thoughts. And I know that this can initially be terrifying, because we adamantly do not want anything bad. We do not want these bad outcomes, but whatever we resist persists. So allow yourself to take note of what beliefs and assumptions you actually hold, and if they are in conflict, if they are in contrast with what you desire, then that is your cue to go back into imagination. Go back in imagination and give yourself the experience of that desired state instead. Say to yourself, what would it be like if I were the version of me that never reacted to these negative thoughts? If I genuinely believed that my person is madly in love with me, that my business is wildly successful, that I am financially abundant, what would that be like? And then give that experience to yourself in your imagination. Because once you learn to do this, once you learn to discern between the thoughts that create the thoughts that do nothing, and understand fully that you are the operant power that decides which is which, once you know this, once you understand this, that is actually how you manifest literally anything that you want. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you found this helpful and informative. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you are interested in any of my resources, such as my coaching programs, workshops and courses, my podcast, my blog, I've got a ton of resources down in the description box below, so don't forget to check it out. Also, do not forget to check out the other videos on this channel. Don't forget to check out my Manifestation Fundamentals playlist. Each video is a different topic, but they all talk about how to manifest the best life ever. So until we meet again, you guys, as always, take care, be well, and never forget how powerful you truly are. Happy manifesting, guys.